In the last video, we ended up setting up our aiming, so we have some basic weapon sway here that goes through and slowly interpolates up and down like that. Now, what I want to do is I want to instead kind of decrease it on the width a little bit to speed it up a tiny bit. So I'm going to go down just a touch, save it, and look at it. So there's that. Now, I'm not a huge fan of the speed, and we can't really modify the speed very well. I guess we kind of could if we... no, because then that would still be steady if we increase that value. So we're kind of stuck speed-wise. And same thing goes, I was wrong in the previous video. If we increase the interpolation speed, we're still going to be met with the same, well, really just the same kind of speed, because it's only going to be following the curve on the graph. So it wouldn't be a bad idea to have two separate ones, but for the time being, we're going to crunch this up a good bit to where we're at 1.5 and negative 1.5, and look. So that's kind of our just basic movement. So we can increase that or decrease that a little bit farther. Let's go down to just negative 1 to 1. I'd say for moving, that'll be okay, because obviously we can scale it back a little bit if we need to. And we can also increase the range at which it goes, but I want to have it be interpolated between negative 1, or sorry, 0 and negative 1, that the value gets multiplied by. So now we're going to do the same thing for the y-axis, which should be, nope, I can grip it. Probably wouldn't help to turn that off. So here we have this guy, and I'd almost rather have left to right be to a greater extent. So we're at 0.5 there. I'm going to go to 0.6. I'll go to 0.75. Go ahead and set it to the smooth curve. Add another key. And let's drop it down by 2. Add another key. Drop it down by 2. And smooth out both of these. Then we can simply pre-extract, cycle with offset, post-extract, cycle with offset to get the range like that. So now, if we look at it, in our case, it might actually very well be the x-axis instead. So I got myself a little bit confused there. So we're going to do the same thing, but on the x-axis, and then we will delete the positioning for the y. So let's set that. I'm just kind of moving these up out of the way so I have a reference point that I can still follow. Set that. Set that. And then we can delete those from the curve and have it set right back to 0. Set the pre and post extract like before. Save it and look at it. So there's kind of our aim right there. So it kind of gives us the sway. We can obviously adjust this kind of however really needed. Like we can offset it with the Z. So it kind of gives us different results. So this will be something that would probably be pretty decent for you guys to actually play with. Can I drag the whole thing? No, I gotta select them. Just find some kind of spot where you're really offset, and my guess is the curve when it meets here is what's possibly making it look a little unnatural. It's going in that V formation. So I want to bring just this guy in to match, like so. So that's going right on a line. Select all. Oops. In case it's not clear, I'm not 100% sure what I'm doing in regards to this curve. Apparently now we got a circle. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah, it's just back to that line again. So this is something you're probably going to want to tinker with on your own. Try to just find some kind of result that works for you. That's one way you can kind of do it just on a curve. So that kind of gives it a little bit of an X. And we can scale this down. So for example, let's say we set the sway location. We'll times equal it by 0.1. And then look at it. It's barely even moving. So we set it to 0.5 for the multiply. It's moving just very subtly. You can actually see down here the values that it's going for. So that's pretty much, we're going to multiply it by the movement speed itself. So I almost want to, we'll figure this out. So let's see, let's pass in our movement speed to the function, which here it is. So float, or let's do velocity. Okay. Let's go ahead and pass that on in. All right, that's taking in a vector. Let's do vector dot size. And let's get a scale going. So we want to normalize it. So float norm, or actually we can just do that to velocity. So velocity equals u Kismet math library, normalized to range. And I know the max movement speed I want to be 600. So I'm going to actually set it to, let's see, is it taking the current? So current, which is velocity, the range, which I want it to be 0. Let's do 0.5. We can do that 0.0 for now. We're probably going to want to decrease that, so it's always got some sway to it. And then the max. So this is where our movement speed kind of is going to come into play. So what I want to do is I want to comment this out, and I want to print out the velocity that we have. I'm going to close all that, relaunch just to get a baseline. It should be at, I think, 600. Okay, let's look and see. So yeah, we're pretty much at 600. So that's our kind of baseline. I think we can actually get that value from our character movement component. So character, let's see, movement, I can spell it right. Get movement component. It's a max, get max speed. Let's print this out in place of velocity and see if that prints out the correct value. Right, so that prints out 600, so we know that that is good for our max. Okay, so we're going to leave that as so. And we'll just print out our new velocity multiplier. So we're going to multiply it by velocity. And let's see. Yeah, we'll just kind of see what the range is. So I actually want to increase this by plus 100. Just so it's not going to be maxed. So let's print out the values. So we're at 0.8. As you can see, when I move, the sway is increasing. When I stop, it goes down to next to, well, literally nothing, because we have it set to 0. So to increase that range, we can actually subtract from it. So we can give it a range of negative, I don't want to do negative 600 because that'll make the sway at always at 0.5. So let's do negative 300. Better yet, let's actually store our character's max movement speed. So max speed equals that. So let's replace this with max speed. And then we can subtract it by max speed divided by 2 and multiply this by -1. So that's going to be our minimum. So our minimum should be -300 if our max speed is if our max speed is 600. That should always give us a little bit of sway. As you can see, might be easier if I do that. It is barely moving. So we are currently at 0.3 by default. I start moving, goes up. Come to a stop, it goes back down. And if I walk into a wall and slowly move, I move faster, I move slower. You can see that value changing based upon how fast we are actually moving. So that's going to control our kind of sway based upon movement. Now we can lower this interpolation speed to, let's try 5 and see if that changes how aggressively it snaps back. It does a little bit. It's still following just fine, so let's go back down to 1. So it's almost like it's a little too slow at 1. So if we look at it, even though that value is up there a pretty good ways, we still have that, it's not reaching its full point. So we can print this out by doing new vec.c, or better yet, .x, and see where we're at, because if you recall, the curve should have a max of 0.75 and a min of 0.75 as well. We'll see where that's roughly at. So 0.75, it looks like it is actually hitting it. So it might just be our multiplier there that is throwing it off. Yeah, it looks like it's our multiplier then. So if we move and let go, or got that confused. So we're going to want to probably decrease the range at which it goes. So let's try -50 instead. So that should give us a more aggressive move. As you can see, it's just mostly about tweaking. Let's start moving. And I stop and it resettles. All right, so let's drop this down to, well, we'll increase it by 0. And another thing I want to do, I'll do that in actually another video. So there's our movement. I let go. Snaps. And it's still, for some reason, it's just like it's snapping a little too quick. Let's just do 0.1 for the interpolation speed. It moves a good bit slower now. So we're printing out sway location. We're printing out the new vec.x. We want to print out the sway location.x. That's where I made my mistake. There we can see the values are very tiny. They go up to like 0.01. Let's see if we can get it up to roughly its full value. Oops. We get up to 0.3 on that one. And the max was 0.75, so we're at about half. We can check that by our interpolation speed. I got it up to 0.4 something, so let's just do 1.5. So that got us up to a little over 5 something. We can actually just scroll up and simply see that. We got it up to 0.51. We're going to bump that up just a tiny bit more. So 1.8. And that's probably where we're going to leave it. We aim, we'll go up to looks like 5.6. And I think we're good. So let's just do our velocity multiplier again. So we're moving not at all. As you can see, the value goes from negative 0.5 something, like 5.4, to positive. And there's just a little bit of movement. It's very steady. So we can increase this amount by how much we divide it by. So if we wanted, so for example, we take our max speed, which is 600, divided by 2, obviously that's 300. So we're at negative 300 to positive 600. So if we take 600 divided by 3, that brings it to 200. So it's going to close that range up. So we want to, let's just try 4 and see where that leaves us. And since we're not increasing that anymore, we can leave that at 0. And let's look at it. Now, actually, I think I went in the wrong direction. Let's take the max speed divided by, well, if we divide it by 1, let's see what the result is with it at pretty much default. So negative 600 to positive. That should give us a, let me think real quick. All right, so yeah, we currently have a value range from 0.1, looks like 1.1. So we're going to decrease this farther. We're going to go down to 0. Let's try like 0.3 and see where that gives us. As you can see, we go to 0.03, and we do have some noticeable sway. Then when we start walking, that sway increases a good bit. So we're going to actually fix that holographic site real quick. Let's go to our post-process volume, find our motion blur. We're going to check actually all these and just set it to 0. And there, now that dot no longer has that annoying little blur to it. All right, so that gives us our value there. I do want it to move faster. So we're going to take all these and crunch them up. That moves them a little bit faster. We can do that a good bit more. Make them very steep. And I'd say that's a little bit better. However, it shakes too much when we are just at idle. And I'd say that's okay. And it works all the same for each optic, so that's good to go. And yeah, that's for the most part pretty much all we're going to do there for movement weapon sway. We just want to set it up so it's only, actually we do want to continue to call this so we can get rid of this check here to call, and it probably wouldn't hurt to move the velocity inside of that function. So let's do that real quick. So we're going to just do our own velocity inside of move vector curve. So we get our velocity, remove the parameter, and that's going to use this value here. And that's actually going to be a float. So let's do velocity vec for the name, and then float velocity equals velocity vec dot size, and that'll fix that. Then we just have to do the removing of that from the header, and that'll take care of pretty much everything. So let's just save, recompile, and confirm that we're good to go. Okay, we can relaunch. everything back up. Let's check it. Still moves. And there we go. So I'd say we are good to go. Obviously, this needs a lot of tweaking and fine tuning to make it look natural, but for what we have, that is fine. So we can get rid of this line as well. We're going to copy velocity. We're going to take this value and simply multiply it by velocity. And then that's going to store everything in sway location. And we should be fine. Yep. So we are good to go. So that's going to be it for this video. If you like what I'm doing and you want to help support me, you can find a link to my Patreon down in the description below, where I have a team deathmatch series just for Patrons, as well as you get early access to pretty much all of my videos, such as this one. If you have any questions or anything like that, feel free to join my Discord that's also down below, and I'll try to help you out. So, I'll see you in the next one.